Is it just bad writing, or is it downright offensive? My name's Sam, and this is my channel. Do 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 do. Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Sam, and today I'll be reviewing Dead is the New Black by Marlene Perez. In this book, readers are placed in a present-day time in a normal enough town, but with a supernatural twist. This book takes place in the fictional town of Nightshade, California, and follows the adventures of Daisy Giordano. The youngest of three, the social outcast, and the only one in her family without psychic powers, Daisy's life sucks. At least until she decides to do something about it. One afternoon, Daisy overhears her mother talking to the local sheriff, who also happens to be the father of her best friend, about the attacks and disappearances of local girls. At first, Daisy tries prying the information out of her sisters Rose and Poppy, but when they refuse to help, she decides to confront her mother straight up about being involved in this situation. They all treat Daisy like she's fragile because she's the only one in her family without supernatural abilities, and being frustrated by this, she decides to take things into her own hands, roping along her best friend Ryan. Eventually, Daisy becomes convinced that her ex-best friend Samantha is actually a vampire and she's the one targeting cheerleaders. Dead is the New Black is the first in a series, so we have a couple subplots going on here. We find out that Daisy has a crush on Ryan, but Ryan has a crush on Samantha from the very first few pages of the book. I like that we get to see this storyline develop in a natural way. Daisy and her friends are juniors in high school and are supposed to be living in an extremely small town. Coming from a place that's only about 2 miles wide myself, I find Daisy and Ryan's situation pretty relatable. Everybody in my high school always dated on and off, and when the dating pool is so small, you often end up dating your friends' exes. And yes, sometimes that got dramatic and messy, but because we were from such a small town, really nobody batted an eye. So seeing a shift in relationships in this book and then further on in the series reminds me of being in high school myself. I can't say I necessarily enjoy that feeling, but it is relatable. Another subplot we discover is that Daisy's dad has been missing for a while. Rumors are spread throughout the town that he kind of just abandoned the family to run off with another woman, and it's so much so that the sisters are kind of starting to believe it. But along the way, we get a lot of passive clues that let us know that something way more sinister is going on, and Mr. Giordano did not leave of his own free will. In fact, it does have something to do with Samantha's father. I like the general premise of the story. Personally, I have a soft spot for urban fantasies, especially ones that have the modern-day suburban take with a secret supernatural history. I like the way Perez delves into the side characters' backstories and really shows the underbelly of Nightshade. Honestly, I think this book would do really well as a Pretty Little Liars or Gossip Girl type TV show, and people would just eat it up. It has this flair for teen drama, and I truly believe that's because this book is so campy. I swear, Dead is the New Black is cheesier than a fondue fountain, but it's that corniness that rounds out the book. This novel has a lot of rough edges that I'll talk about in a minute, but it is in fact the humor that got me through this novel. So, if you're not too annoyed by what I'm about to bring up, I do think that you'll enjoy it too. Let's get down to the nitty-gritty then. I read this book when it first came out in 2008, and something about it just didn't sit right with me, and I couldn't pinpoint what because I was genuinely enjoying the story. At this point, I was in middle school, so besides the reading I was doing in the classroom, I wasn't reading that critically. I was reading for fun. So it took a couple passes through the books before I could actually pinpoint what exactly was bothering me about the novel itself. And I figured it out. I felt like I was being patronized. Perez has a simple writing style, and I understand that she's a grown woman writing for a much younger crowd, but something was completely off. I truly don't understand if it's a lack of confidence or if the writer believes that her audience is thicker than a bag of bricks. For example, I noted that the realistic teenage relationships are one of the things that kept me drawn into the storyline. However, there were moments where the characters would make really brash decisions or just make decisions that were generally out of character for themselves, and it was never really explained why that was. I am sorry for the noise. It suddenly started storming while I was in the middle of recording, so if you hear all that, that is literally just wind outside. So my thoughts are that there are three options here. 1. Perez believes that we'll make the assumption that these lapses in character are due to the fact that they're teenagers and teenagers are hormonal. 2. Perez knows that she's writing for a teenage audience and believes that she doesn't have to either go into detail or be consistent. Or 3. It's just not that well written. Unfortunately, I'm leaning towards the third option. Remember how I said I have a soft spot for urban fantasy, especially when it has a very subtle historical supernatural effect to it? Well, the history is subtle, but the characters are not. There is one character that is introduced, and his physical descriptors are, in fact, compared to a dog, and later we find out he's a werewolf. As much as I enjoy cheese, this sandwich is leaky. And honestly, if I hadn't read it when I was 12, I probably wouldn't have the same fondness for this book that I do now. Most of the books in this series that I've read so far give me really big Twilight vibes. I don't think Twilight was well written either, and while Twilight is kind of like dark and romantic, and Dead is the New Black is more slice of life and campy, I do believe that on a scale, Dead is at least one step above Twilight. You could also say that this book has similar feelings to the House of Night series, but stripped down a bit. Now, I really loved the House of Night series, and I still have a lot of big feelings about that. So, if you're interested on seeing me review either books individually or the series as a whole, let me know down in the comments. All in all, Dead is the New Black and the accompanying books are fun. The storyline is simple, sometimes frustratingly so, but I enjoy the world and the side characters enough to overlook it. This book would be a nice read if you're trying to get back into reading after taking a long break, or if you're trying to get a younger kid to read that isn't very interested or has comprehension difficulties. I'm not saying this is a bad book. Actually, I kind of like the story, I kind of like the characters, but the problem is that the like is only kind of. And if you're not willing to overlook major flaws in the writing process, then you're going to be extremely annoyed by this series. Well, that's all I've got for you today. Tell me how you feel about oversimplified books. Is it bad writing, or is it just downright offensive? Let me know in the comments. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. All my other social medias will be linked down below. Otherwise, I'll see you next week for more shenanigans.